Hi, everyone. This is a Leadership with Heart podcast, and this is Heather Younger, your host. Employee experience is powered by emotions. Managers and or leaders within organizations get to choose which emotions they unleash from within the people they lead. Leaders, meaning supervisors or above in an organization, drive much of the positive or negative emotions by their actions or inactions, their words, or what they fail to say. When a manager chooses their words and their actions carefully, they exhibit great emotional intelligence. These managers are often thought of as leaders who care, or as I like to call them, leaders with heart. This special brand of leader drives engagement and loyalty simply by being themselves. Are these leaders perfect? Absolutely not. It is in their awareness and sharing of some of their imperfections that we realize their brilliance. In this podcast, I ask you to see yourself in the stories my guests tell about times when they were not the best versions of themselves, but how they used their hearts to guide them to a place of deeper connection with their teams and heightened leadership prowess. Enjoy. Hi, everybody. This is Heather with the Leadership with Heart podcast. And today I am very honored and thrilled to have Don Davis on the phone. He actually came to me. He was referred to me by someone I worked with in a county government role. And I asked him, the person that was referring Don, I asked him, do you know of any leaders that would be really amazing guests for the show? They lead with heart. They're more emotionally intelligent. They put their people first. And of course, you came on to the list. So Don, welcome.
Thank you, Heather. It's great to be here.
So where are you right now in your leadership journey?
Oh, wow. That's a pretty deep question. We start out with the light stuff, right?
Yes.
So I think for those that don't know me, I was in the Marine Corps for 27 years. I retired from U.S. Northcom and NORAD as a colonel. When I was given the opportunity approximately 3 years ago to take the helm here at Jefferson County. I would like to think this is kind of a culmination of my service, my public service in the military, leading America's finest men and women around the globe, and with that opportunity to continue public service at the local level. So for me, it was like leaving one Super Bowl team at the height of my career without doing the downfall piece and joining another Super Bowl team and actually, continuing, but with a different team. So it's been pretty amazing for me and a great opportunity.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so now I'm curious to know where your drive to lead comes from, because you have that long track record of military leadership and now going into local government leadership. Where does that drive come from? Where did it start?
Oh boy, I think it starts the moment we enter our service in the military. For me, it was when I was a freshman in college as an NROTC student. You're immediately indoctrinated into the military in such a way that helps you understand the gravity of the service that you're about to enter, so that when you do so 4 years later and you graduate and you receive a commission, that you fully understand that you're going to be leading men and women. You're going to be leading sons and daughters, the most precious gift that parents can give to our country, and it's a pretty tremendous responsibility. So I think for me, I might not, being in high school and playing sports and stuff like that, it was obviously a part of your leadership development. But when it really turned into high gear and you went from the minors to the majors was, when you enter college and you've got a Marine officer instructor and some senior Marine leadership that are guiding you and mentoring you as you go through college and you grow. And then you go to officers candidate school and you again get molded. The idea is to strip all of us of our baggage and to rebuild us in an ideal leadership format with a full understanding of the men and women that we're going to lead and what is needed to do that.
How do you use that model at all? Like when you're now in the leadership role, you have local government with the people that report to you, the other leaders that report to you, because they end up being something like a VP in the corporate world of an organization. How do you go through that process at all that you just talked about, kind of like stripping people of the baggage and then rebuilding them up to the leader they really are supposed to be?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I think not quite like the military. I'm pretty certain that most of the folks would not react positively to to a drill instructor yelling at them or a county manager yelling at them. And not that it's done that way, because there's a lot of different ways to go about molding leadership through mentoring and guidance and so forth. But we do have a leadership academy that we do here at Jefferson County. In fact, the graduation was yesterday, and the focus on that academy is not to teach people technical leadership skills, but the focus on that academy is to teach people who they are, because it's really hard to develop as a leader if you don't know yourself. One of the leadership traits and principles in the Marine Corps and in the military in general is to know yourself and seek self-improvement. And if we can teach leaders that, then we break down those barriers. They break down all the defenses and walls that they have placed up around them to protect themselves, and they're more willing to become vulnerable. You know, a lot of times when I was first interviewing for jobs, when I was first interviewing for this job, people say, hey, you're transitioning from the military, you tell people to jump and they say how high, and, you got to go from this very centralized, organization with centralized command and control. And you got to come over to this new environment where you have to be collaborative and compassionate and, things like that. And then I would say, well, do you want the truth? And they'd say, yeah, we want the truth. And I slap the table and say, you can't handle the truth, and basically quote the Hollywood movie where Jack Nicholson is Colonel Jessup in A Few Good Men, because unfortunately, that's the view that most people that have no understanding or little understanding of the military, that's how they view military people and leaders. They think it's this, big tough guy mentality and things like that. And I got to tell you, the best leaders in the military exhibit all the best leadership traits that any organization would find valuable. We are collaborative. There are times when you do have to do something when life or death is on the line and time is of the essence. You don't have time to discuss and brainstorm and do those types of things. So you need in those times of crisis that immediate obedience and the immediate response. But all the other times when you have the time to deliberately plan and to discuss, I don't think there's a more collaborative organization in the world than the U.S. military, when we work together to come up with answers that nobody else thought of.
Wow. That's amazing. Well, I think that's good. You see a lot of folks that are speakers, authors, trainers that have been in the military, and they've had great successes, and so that there's a lot there. There's so much there, and I'm sure that really lends to the richness of your leadership. So, I think that's great. I'm excited to have you, because you are the first one who's had this angle, and I've almost had now 100 interviews on my show. So,
well, thank you very much. That kind of leads me into I have a leadership philosophy and vision. One thing about the military is, and in particular for officers, I was a young captain, and a guy by the name of T.S. Jones, Major General at the time, he walked into my office and he said, "Davis, what's your vision?" And I jumped to attention. I said, 2020, sir. I said, "No, that's not what I'm talking about." He says, "What's your vision for your life? What's your vision? What's your leadership philosophy? Because you lead men and women, you got to have a direction for your life." Now, back in those days, we used compasses. Like, we didn't have GPS to tell us where to go. So when we did land navigation and we did things like that, we used a compass, and you had to have an azimuth. And that azimuth is a general direction that you follow in order to get to your destination. And when you come upon obstacles like a river or a lake or something like that, you point the compass across that obstacle, and you find a reference point. And you put the compass in your pocket, you maneuver, you go to that, you walk around the obstacle, get back on your reference point, and then you take your compass back out and you get back on your azimuth. So a vision is a lot like an azimuth on a compass. It's a direction for your life, and it helps you in the good times and the bads. Whether you can get blinded on the peaks of success, and you can get lost in the valley of despair and troubles, but you need to have a vision. And so that began a mentoring relationship with me that lasted several years while I was a commander. And he helped me develop my leadership philosophy, which is pretty simple. It's just 15 words, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But he taught me he said, Davis, you got to have a vision. And he said, there's 4 things about a vision. Number 1, you should have one. Number 2, you should write it down so that you can remember it. Number 3, you should post it somewhere where you can see it and remind yourself of it daily. And he said, most importantly, you need to share your vision with those around you so they can keep you on task and on target. Because if you have a vision and you don't share it with anybody and they don't know you have that vision, then when you're not following that vision or when you're not on course, who's going to help you get back on course? So it's those types of things. And that's the objective of having a vision. And so for me, my vision, there's an overarching concept in the military we have. It's called mission first, people always. We never forget that there's a mission to accomplish. We've got to get that done because the people of our country count on us to do that. But we never forget that it's with people, by people, for people. And so mission first, people always is overarching. And there's an art and science to leading people in that way. And the science piece is pretty easy. It's making sure that folks have the things they need to do what they do. If you're a heavy equipment operator, do you have your licenses and your equipment to do the things that you need to do, and your safety equipment? Do you have insurance? Do you have all those types of things that are actual needs? And then the other part of it is more of an art. And the art part is understanding what people's desires and wants are. And that's a little bit more difficult because it requires a relationship with the people that you lead and the people that you serve. And so you get an understanding of what someone's desires and wants are, and you match that up with the organization. And to the extent that you can match them up and move both forward, you do so. And that's easy. But then you also got to be able to look someone in the eye when they don't match up and say, that's not something that we can do, but maybe there's some other options that we can help you elsewhere. So that's the overarching concept. But 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 5 words. All people are created equal. We find these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal, endowed with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thomas Jefferson penned those words in the Declaration of Independence over 240 years ago. And that is key to me in the sense that, all people are equal in that they've been created and they all have unique gifts and talents that nobody else has. So it would be an injustice if I treated everybody exactly the same. What I really need to do, and what those words mean to me, is I owe everybody an equal effort to get to know who they are and what they're about, what makes them tick. And, in the movie Rocky, I don't know, you might remember the original movie Rocky. Most of the folks I talk to, they don't know what I'm talking about. But in that original movie Rocky, Paulie says to Rocky, he says, Rocky, why you like my sister? She's a nobody. And Rocky says, Adrian's not a nobody. She's a somebody. She's got gaps and I got gaps. But together we ain't got no gaps. And you see, that's true of people too. But in order to understand the team, I've got to get to know people and where their strengths and weaknesses are so that I can match them up with other team members to cover the gaps and to make us stronger. And so if you took your hands out and you opened your fingers and you put your fingers together, you would see that when they're apart, you've got these gaps. But when you put them together, there's no more gaps. And that's what it means to give an equal effort to find out who your people are, what they're about, where their strengths and weaknesses are, and how they piece together to make a cohesive team. So that's 5 words. 4 words. In the beginning, God. I'm not here to proselytize anybody or make them believe what I believe. Even faith in nothing is faith in something. But the key about that is mind, body, and spirit. Napoleon said that the moral is to the physical as 3 to 1. And what he meant by that was that when his army was spiritually fit, they were 3 times more capable than they were when they weren't. And mind, body, and spirit work really well together. It's like a 3-legged stool. Anybody would sit on a stool that has 3 strong legs, but I'm pretty certain most folks wouldn't want to sit on one that only had 2 strong legs and 1 weak leg. And so mind, body, and spirit is like a triangle. We call it a MEPS triangle. In the middle is the emotional. When mind, body, and spirit are balanced, then the emotional in the middle is balanced, and people are happier and more productive. So for me, mental and physical in any organization is addressed most of the time. In the Marine Corps, mentally, we challenged our people, we trained them, we sent them to schools, we did that type of stuff. Same thing here at the county, we train people. We've got a fantastic wellness program, all those types of things. a lot of times those spiritual stuff, people say, oh, well, I don't want to touch that. And I think that's a mistake. I think leaders to ignore the spiritual aspect of leadership is a huge mistake. So I encourage people to grow spiritually, whatever that means. Ask questions. Why am I here? Why do I do the things that I do? What's my purpose in life? Because I think those are extremely important questions that drive our spirit and drive the things that we do. But they have to work with the mental and the physical. So you can't avoid the spiritual part. And I think that's important to leadership. So that's my 4 words. 3 words, I love you. There is no greater gift than to give your life for a friend. And while the career that I was in when I was in the Marine Corps literally may have required me to give my life, I think it's more than that. In our country, unfortunately, we've dumbed down the word love. We've made that word, I love my dog. I love my cat. I love my wife. I love my kids. I love my parents. I love the Denver Broncos. I just use the same word to describe inanimate objects, animals, and people. And so we've dumbed that word down. The kind of love I'm talking about is an agape love, an unconditional love. And then the question is who do you have that love for? Unfortunately, a lot of times too, we only love the people that look like us and act like us. But an agape love, an unconditional love, is for your neighbor. And your neighbor is everybody around you, the people that don't look like you, don't act like you, maybe don't even like, but you got to love them. And so in the public service business, we come to serve, not to be served. And it's a very important aspect of who we are, that we love the people that we serve, that we work with, and that we work for. And so that's a very important component that I try to use in my vision. 2 words, courage and commitment. Got to be committed to having the courage to practice honor. Courage and commitment in the Marine Corps, honor, courage, and commitment are core values. But I think courage and commitment in particular are core to honorable service. If you did something, if you exercised courage or commitment 9 times out of 10, most people would say you're pretty committed or you're pretty courageous. But what about that one time that you don't exercise courage or commitment? What if that one time someone loses their job, someone gets hurt, or worse yet, someone dies? Will anybody care about the 9 times that you did it? I think, courage and commitment is about doing the right things for the right reasons, not just some of the time, but all of the time. And as public servants, we have a pretty strong calling. Our country and our community, they really kind of expect our character and our conduct to be beyond reproach because they put special trust and confidence in us. And so I think courage and commitment are key to that. And then the final word, the number 1 word, is humility. I was a part of the few, the proud, but how much more strength would it require for me to be a part of the few, the humble? Humility is elevating everyone else above yourself. C.S. Lewis said that humility wasn't thinking less of yourself, but thinking about yourself less. And so for me, humility is key, all of it. Imagine a world where we lived, if everybody elevated everyone else above themselves. I mean, it would be a pretty amazing place and a pretty amazing world. So humility, for me, is a very important aspect of how we approach things and how we serve and how we lead. So those are my 5, 4, 3, 2. Those are my 15 words. I give that speech and that talk every other week to our new employees. I spend about 30 minutes with them every other week, and welcome them to the family and let them know that I love them and that they're adopted into our family and that this is how I go. But I share that with them with the intent that they will hold me accountable to it. Because Heather, I'm going to tell you, every day I'm going to punt it into the grandstands. I will fail in every category, but I need my teammates to help pick me up, get me back into the huddle, and we call another play and we move on. So that's the most important reason why I share that vision with my people. It's not so much to inspire them or challenge them to have their own vision, but so that they'll hold me accountable to that vision.
Let's talk, Don, now about a time when you were not the best version of you. If you can be real specific, a time when maybe all the principles that you have and all the things that you just listed as far as your vision, where you maybe fell short in that regard. And then what did you do to come out of it, just to kind of get to a better place where you're more enlightened?
Wow. I would have to say that there are times typically when my life has gotten the darkest or the dreariest or the most complicated. has been when I move away from that. Certainly faith plays a large role in who I am and what I do. But there are those times when, the worst version of me comes out. And the way to recover, though, is like I said, is your teammates kind of pull you aside and they say, hey, Don, you remember you talked about humility? You're not being too humble right now. Or remember you talked about love and you got a lot of hate in you right now. Or, fill in the blank for any one of the other points in my vision. But so
do you have a specific story? Like, can you think of something where it never went away? Like you just remember it, because it's in telling of those stories where the true learning comes in for the listeners. That's really where they start to learn.
Wow. Boy. So when I was a battalion commander, within the first 4 months of command, I lost 4 Marines. 2 were by POV accidents, and 2 were as a result of a double homicide. And it was a pretty tough time because you never want to bury someone that you lead. You don't want to be the person handing a flag to a parent and saying those words on behalf of a grateful nation as you hand that flag to a parent. Those are the times when that time in particular, those first 4, I thought that was a sign of really bad things to come, because we were working to deploy to Iraq and to spend 6 months over there doing things there. And so I thought it was a sign of bad things to come. And it helped me refocus on things that were important, because I think at that point in my career, I was very successful. I was moving in a lot of things. But I think that time in my life really helped to humble me and to help me refocus on things that were really important. There wasn't anything I could do or, our leadership could do to bring those 4 people back. But there were certainly things that we could do to prevent anybody else from losing their lives. And so that specific time in my life was a pretty, significant event in my life in terms of a wake-up call and making sure that you're taking the things that you do to heart, and that you're humbly serving in a way that you're always looking at others and you're not looking at yourself.
Mm. So you felt like before that instance, you may have been more like self-centered versus others focused. Is that what you're getting to here with like that?
Yeah, I think you can get caught up in the gravitas of being a commander and having, at that time I had over 1,000 Marines that I was leading directly. And you can get kind of caught up in that and forget that there are things going on every day. There are little things that you need to pay attention to, and to not get caught up and lost in the big stuff. Sometimes you can get so focused on the political and the big picture that you forget that there's a lot of granularity down at sea level. You're up in the atmosphere, and there are times for head up activities and head down activities. But as a leader, you've got to have both. There are times to be looking at the long view, but you can never forget, the short view and the close up. And that was a reminder to me that I needed to make sure I was focusing on some of the smaller things because they were just as important as some of the bigger things.
That's pretty powerful. I think, as leaders, we could do that, and particularly executive leaders. So in that role, in your current role, you having that connection to the people, what happens, people don't realize, executive leaders don't realize that the troops, that anybody that's hierarchically beneath them or reporting up through the ranks, right? Mm-hmm. They desire a connection with the executive leadership team. They actually have a desire to know, like, first, number one, what it is they're doing and how it connects to the larger mission or the vision of the organization. They want to know they want to know every kind of on a weekly basis. And then you talked about earlier doing those videos every other week or whatever it is, right? Those are the things that say, okay, here's how that vision that I talked about helps to connect the work you do to what's happening with that vision. And the more that leaders can do that, can connect the dots for the people and keep the connection to them, like letting them know who we are. Who am I? Who do I represent? How do I play a role in this larger vision? And then who are you, which is what your Leadership Academy does, and how do what you do connect to then the larger vision. And that's where leadership is powerful. It's when we are able to connect that and show them that line between the front and the back and the up and the down.
I couldn't agree more.
Right? We embolden our people to them. We embolden them to us. Like at that point, they're just stuck with us. They want to be with us. So it's just huge.
So that's an interesting comment, because in the military, it's a lot easier for us to connect the smaller things up to the bigger things and the larger mission and what we're trying to do and those types of things. I kind of grew up, General James Mattis was one of the leaders in the Marine Corps when I was there. And, under his leadership, he would always be able to help us connect from the lowest level up to the highest level, what our mission was. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've been able to bring to Jefferson County, is because you're not a manager. I don't think of myself. In fact, as Marines and especially officers, we hate the word. It's not management. We manage people, or, you manage things, but you lead people. Mm-hmm. And so leadership is a much better word that we like to focus on. And, you come to, so my county, there's over 3,000 employees here at Jefferson County. Probably 2/3 of that is underneath me, and then another third of it is under various elected officials. But I've got a $600 million budget. We serve 580,000 citizens across 774 square miles of land. And it's easy for everybody to get lost in how they're serving, and they look at what they're doing as a job rather than as a calling. And, whether it's someone sitting at the DMV, think about the person that works at the DMV. I don't think there's anyone in our country that enjoys going to the DMV to register their vehicle. But there's an employee that is waiting to welcome someone who doesn't want to be there. It's like going to the dentist. In fact, I think there are people out there that would rather go to the dentist than to go to the DMV. But those folks selflessly serve every day. And when we can help them realize how important it is that they do their job and how it's connected to the larger picture, they do their job with a different sense of pride and a willing spirit. And so, it's important for me to do leadership by walking around and to get out and talk to people. And, oftentimes people, when I first got here, I was walking around and, I was talking to people and so forth. They're like, who are you? And I'd say, county manager. And they'd say, well, I've been here 30 years and I've never seen the county manager. This is a first. What's wrong? And, trying to change that culture from it's just a job to it's a calling, and that we serve the people of our community. It's interesting. A lot of Marines that leave, especially senior officers, and you leave, you really miss the brotherhood, the sisterhood of the military. But I got to tell you, I haven't missed a beat. It's been amazing. The men and women that work for Jefferson County and local government. I found this true with my peers that work, that are leaders in the cities and the other counties. The men and women that work in local government are every bit as patriotic as any Marine, sailor, soldier, or airman that I ever led. And I say that with confidence and with heart, knowing that there are people here. They're not so much in, yes, it's a job. Yes, it puts food on the table, but they're here because they want to serve. And it's really refreshing to be a part of a team like that.
Yes. I know when I worked at Adams County, I did see that. I felt that I tend to be a natural servant person anyway, just who I am. And so when I was there, I felt that was the one thing I really enjoyed about it. And I loved the people. And I did see so many people that were really, took so much pride in the work and that service idea and making sure that the community was happy. And yeah, it's interesting I've also worked for a nonprofit. And so in both instances, I felt very mission driven, and my heart is always driven. I have a podcast called Leadership with Heart, for goodness sake. So
right.
Everything is kind of mission oriented for me. So I can totally see what you're talking about. I've never been in the military. But I know I can sense based on what you're saying that there's that similarity and overlap there. And
what number are you on it? What number are you on the Enneagram?
I've never done Enneagram. I am
really?
For DISC, I am a high I, a little S, if you know DISC.
Okay. Yeah. I would have said you're a 2 based on what you've said, a helper.
Yeah. I think I do that a lot. Yeah. I definitely am that person. And I'm a driver too, in a funny way, but you have to be when you have your own business like I do, right?
Yes,
you just have to be
indeed.
someone who gets, I get nothing done. So, oh gosh. So this is amazing. So for those who are listening who might need just like a little extra oomph, or they come here really because they want their learning, but they want a little motivation. What might be one or two pearls of wisdom you'd leave them with? You already gave them your 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that was quite amazing. And I'm sure they were kind of like, okay, that's amazing. What are some of the things that you like, practical things you think they can do, or something that you want to just leave them with right now?
Well, it would be those 4 things that General Jones shared with me over 25 years ago. That vision that I've shared with you, I don't just use that for the organizations that I lead. I've used that as whether I was a youth soccer coach or baseball coach, basketball, whatever, any organization that I've been a part of, I use that. I think if I was to give one thing is if you don't know who you are as a person, how are you going to help other people find who they are? And so I think it's imperative for those who would like to lead to sit down and really ask those questions of who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? What do I want to do? And develop their own personal vision in leadership. I'm not talking about an organizational vision or something that's technically focused on a particular field or anything else. I'm talking about you as a person. How do you want to live your life? And how do you want to be? How do you want to interact with others? Do you want to interact with love and humility, compassion, those types of things? Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think that's critical, but you can't care for other people if you don't know who you are. So I would encourage those out there listening that maybe need is self-reflect, get an understanding of who you are, figure out what you want to be, and then set a course. Because if you talk about it and it's hypothetical, but you never write it down and you never have that vision, you don't have a guidepost, and you need to post it and remind yourself. I mean, I think there's a lot of businesses, there's a lot of people out there who publish quotes and the people have them on their desks. They have it there for a reason because they want to inspire. And so how do you inspire yourself if you don't know yourself? So get to know yourself, write down some ideas of where you want to go and what you want to do. Post them somewhere where you can see them. And then most importantly, share that with others so that they can remind you of where you want to go.
Thank you. That is beautiful. So for those listening right now, if you found value in listening to our conversation, please do share this, because again, it helps the podcast grow and more listeners. We can kind of move up the totem pole on Leadership Podcast. And don't forget to write a review on wherever you listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. That also helps the algorithm and get people to actually listen to this good content. These leaders are amazing. They come from all walks, all industries, many countries. And so that's what makes this so rich. So I definitely appreciate all of you listening. And Don, this has been great. I really appreciate you joining. And I'm so thankful, Nick, if you're out there listening, for you connecting us as well.
Thanks, Heather. I appreciate what you're doing. Leadership through the heart is definitely a concept of servant leadership. And I think it's the way that we ought to go. I think if folks take that approach nationwide, we can gain the unity that we need to continue to be a leader in the world and in our community. So thank you for what you're doing and the love and the heart that you're spreading.
Thank you. That means a lot. And thank you, everybody, for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. Talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. You can grab the show notes by visiting customerfanatics.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter.